Cara Maxwell and Alexa Aston. Ladies, it's so nice to see you. Thanks for taking the time to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So Alexa is old hat at this, and we've talked lots of times before, but Lexi and Cara, I haven't had a chance to meet either of you except through email. So it's lovely to be able to actually see moving faces and talk to people in person. So we had 3 releases this week, which is, I think, our norm going forward for the next couple of weeks. We seem to be pretty release heavy for the early spring. But we're going to go ahead and start with Alexa's book, which is the second book in the Suddenly the Duke series. And I love the idea of suddenly becoming a Duke. I love the setup for this series. And this one is Music for the Duke. So yes. Alexa, can you tell us about it?
It is. This is the second of 8 books. The women in this series are very unusual in that they have occupations, or they want to pursue occupations. And on the opposite side, these are men who are coming into titles that are very unexpected. So you have 2 clashing kind of cultures happening. In Music for the Duke, Henry is a witness to his father and grandfather's death at the same moment. It's a very tragic kind of thing. Dementia's involved. And I think some readers might really relate to some of that. He is a role player. Henry goes by the rules. He is going to be a good Duke. He is going to follow rules. He is going to get the right Duchess. He's not going to make a false move in society's eyes. And of course, naturally, he's attracted to a woman who's the exact opposite of that. She is from the Ton. She lost both of her parents and has been mourning in the country. And her cousin, who got the title of Lord Parkhurst, say that 3 times, summons her to London. And so she thinks it's going to be for her delayed come out, that, she can be launched and get a husband. He can wash his hands of her because they were oil and water as cousins. He was kind of one of those bullies, kind of picked on her and everything. Well, she winds up in the attic with the servants, and he farms her out to give music lessons to children of members of polite society. And then he collects the fees. So basically, she's just like Cinderella living in the attic, except there are no nights there to make progress for her. So 2 mutual friends, i.e. hero and heroine of book 1, Portrait of a Duke. These 2 meet. And of course, there's an attraction. And Henry is appalled when he learns that Fia is a musician, that her goal in life is to play at ton events in quartets, not dance at them, play at them. And on top of that, she wants to compose music. Okay, that's about as many rules as you can break for a female, in polite society. And so he does not want to have anything to do with her. But of course, it's a romance, so we have to bring them together. And that's the whole point of it. Will Fia be able to find a man who can accept her for who she is and allow her to be this musician and composer? And on the opposite side, can Henry relax a little bit, unbend, and not think of society's rules, think with his heart and not his head? And he learns to do that with the help of Daniel and Margaret from book 1.
So we need a Henry character arc here. He's got a growth curve. He's got to move.
He does. He's a good guy. I mean, he's one of those heroes that, nothing big or bad has happened in his life until these 2 tragic deaths. And he's just, like I said, he's a rule follower. He plays by the rules. He's just, he just wants everything to be linear. You go from A to B, and these are the milestones you hit, and you get a Duchess, and then you have heirs, and then you do this and that. He just wants everything to be a formula. And Fia, bless her heart, she grieved with these parents she loved so much. And then she's being treated less than a servant in her cousin's household. And it's just, it's sad. I think readers are going to relate, though, to this.
Yeah. I love the idea of him getting kind of knocked off track, too. Her finding someone who could love her for who she is, and him getting knocked a little bit sideways so that he can realize that the world is better and brighter than he.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there are more shades, and she definitely wants to color outside the lines, and she's going to teach him to do that.
Oh, fun. Oh, it sounds like so much fun. So I love that the series too, that they all have art occupations that they follow.
They're pursuing different things. The next one that's coming up, she actually trains men who are coming into their title. You might remember from Downton Abbey how Matthew unexpectedly wound up with the title, and he didn't know the right language to use and the right clothes to wear, and that kind of thing. And so she actually trains people for their role in society. I've got a Bow Street runner. I've got a hat designer. I've got a furniture designer. So just some very different out of the box things for women of this era.
Every time you talk about the training men one, my mind goes in a completely different direction. Totally.
Yeah. I'm sure Mr. Aston
not
has
now.
something to say about that. Yeah, he's pretty well trained. Even now, he knows. Just before I came in here, he's like, I know I'm not supposed to knock on the door. I'm not supposed to talk to you, even if I'm bleeding or dying. I said, yes, honey, that's right. Do not interrupt.
You're on fire. Fire counts too.
Oh, I need to add that to the list. So yeah, so he's well trained, and we'll see how that next sudden do is, whether he takes to the training or takes to the trainer.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to look forward to there. So Cara, this is your first book with Dragonblade that came out this week.
Yes.
And it's in bed with a blackguard. I had to ask how to say it, so I'm sure I did it right. So it's In Bed with a Blackguard, and it's the first book in the Lady Knight series. And you've got women who don't follow societal norms either, and you're.
Yes.
I know it's a 3 for this week because Lexi's like
Yes.
So,
go ahead.
Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, they are. So Jaquetta, Jack, is about as far from following societal norms as you can get. In the first scene of the book, the opening scene, she seduces one man into a room, drugs his drink, and then in order to lure our hero, Grayson, to follow her so she can allow him to kidnap her. So things get a little hairy right from the beginning.
Even if that plan goes well, it's got dodgy bits,
Right. I mean, we've got daggers and bodices and poison in her shoes and all kinds of things. So she is not your regular run-of-the-mill debutante, and she's never felt that way. And for the last few years, she has been a lady knight. And so that's kind of the setup for the whole series, is that Waterloo has happened, the war is over, the men are back. But now Queen Charlotte has put together her own group of lady knights who work within the ton and within their sphere of womanhood to protect the realm. So Jack is tasked with bringing down not Grayson, but his boss, finding out who his boss is. And so her job is get herself kidnapped and allow herself to be held long enough to find out who the big baddie is, and then escape. And it all goes to plan until she comes back to consciousness and she's tied to the mast of a ship. And so
that makes the whole escape thing a different thing.
Yeah, especially yes. So I am a big fan of pirate romances, and so this kind of goes that way in like the Joanna Lindsay type old style. My first real like alpha hole type hero, and Grayson, he is the second son of a duke, but he has some serious damage, and he has fallen into a sort of a indenture of sorts, where his family is threatened and he has to keep doing these morally wrong things that he knows are wrong, but to protect his family, he will keep doing. And the very last thing he has to do before he is free is deliver Jack to his boss, the criminal mastermind. And of course, he's going to fall in love with her. And now he has this horrible decision to make. And her job is to turn them all in. Capture them all. And so
neither one of them can get what they want out of this situation.
No, it's going to be really tense. And the things that make both of them happy are the very things that are going to tear them apart. So it was a lot of fun to write. I learned way more about boats in the 19th century than I ever need to know. And how to manufacture problems that come up on a boat or on a ship.
Hang on to that research. You're going to be able to use
come
it
back.
Right. Save all those tabs. But yes, it's really exciting. And right now I'm working on book 3 in the series. And I just, every character, every lady knight that I get into, I just love her more. And I love getting to give
that's
them
fun.
each sort of their own thing. So Jack's thing is that she seduces men. That's her thing. She uses her beauty to seduce men and get what she wants. And the
That's
heroine
an
of book,
interesting thing.
right? It's a great thing, especially in 1813 or whatnot, or 1817, I think it is. And our second heroine, she picks locks, and our third heroine has a sword hidden in her parasol. I mean, it just is it's gonna be a lot of fun.
I have the secret desire to have a sword hidden in my parasol or a dagger and a riding crop, but I want something that's like I have a pokey thing that's attached to another thing.
Yes,
So I'm gonna
yes.
wait a couple
Especially
decades
fitted
and see if I can
garters
do
with
that.
knives
Yeah,
in
man.
them. Like, yes. Just be creative.
That sounds like so much fun. So the Lady Knights they're all interconnected because they're the Lady Knights
Yes.
are the organization kind of thing.
Yes.
And then each one of the women is related
Yep.
that way.
Yeah. So there's one duchess who kind of runs the whole bit on behalf of the queen. I don't know yet if Queen Charlotte's going to make any cameos. We'll see. And yes, and each of the Lady Knights has been recruited for her special set of skills.
Oh, cool. Very cool. Very cool. So I love that. Well, that sounds like so much fun. And how many books are in this series?
There are 4.
Okay, good. So we get to stay there for a little while. I like it when we get to like sink into a series and hang out for a while.
Yep, 2023 is the year of the Lady Knights. So
wonderful. Wonderful. So Lexi, you also have a heroine that doesn't necessarily do exactly what you would expect her to. So Lexi, your first Dragonblade book's as well, and it's Stealing the Duke, and it's book 1 in Marrying a Mayberry.
That's correct.
Mayberry, not Mayberry. Mayberry.
Yeah, Mayberry.
I read a lot more than I talk, and so when I talk, I'm always a little.
Yes. Actually, I do something a little different. My romances are all inspired by classic literature, and the Marrying a Mayberry series is inspired by Little Women.
Oh, fun!
Yes, I know. It's my favorite book of my tweens back then, and to actually do a whole series based on the book is just so exciting. So, Stealing the Duke is Joanna, who of course is modeled after Jo March. She's Joanna Mayberry. So just in case you couldn't figure it out, right? And she has this penchant for stealing books from her peers, but she usually puts them back in the right home.
Like borrowing, yes.
Yeah. She's all about, she feels that women of the period should have the same education as the men. She wants an Oxford for women. And of course, that doesn't really go over too well in society. So luckily, her Aunt Mayberry has left her a estate. And so she's not worried about marrying. In fact, she doesn't want to marry. She's all about this knowledge thing. And she meets the Duke through her cousin. She has to go to a dinner party with him because he's trying to court the Duke's cousin. And he says some things at dinner that infuriate her. So when the book opens, she's stealing into his library. And when she gets there, it is like the library of your dreams. We're talking stories, fireplace desk, round window with a view, wall-to-wall books, not even a bust of Caesar to interrupt any of those books. And she's like, well, a man of his intelligence couldn't possibly read this. I mean, she knows they're well dusted. So she figures, well, that's his staff taking care of his library. What she doesn't know is that the Duke has read every single book in his library, and he knows where every single book is.
She's going to get caught.
Well, she doesn't. She gets away with it. But that night after the dinner party's over, he notices the book is gone. He knows which book it is. And the funny thing about the book is it's titled The Education of the Feminine Species, because she's already heard what he thinks about what women should be learning, which is embroidery and, singing and things like that. And so she steals that book on purpose. Well, she doesn't realize he bought that book as an example of a fake cover. He wants one of those in his collection. And the real inside is the illustrated pleasures of seduction.
Oh, that's even more fun.
Which she doesn't know any. I mean, she's a proper lady, right? She was brought up appropriately. And so when she first opens them, oh my gosh. Yeah, it's kind of funny as she really believes women should know what men know. And so there's he doesn't know for sure she took it. So there's all this, and he doesn't like London at all. He lost his mom. I mean, he associates London with his mother, who died on a ship to America. And then he's been abandoned by everybody. So he doesn't like London, but he follows her around. Like, he finds out where she's going to be because he's trying to figure out if she's really the one who took it or not. And of course they have all these debates. I mean, and to be honest with you, these two characters are much smarter than I am. I had to do research on what they were talking about. I mean, it was like, okay. And I don't know why she became science minded, because of course I'm an English major. And she's all about all these science things. And I had to look up so many things. And my characters were literally talking over my head. So, but they were fun. I learned a lot. I learned a lot in this book, beyond even the Regency information that I already knew quite a bit about. But it was, these two, he doesn't realize how stuck he is in his thinking. He thinks he's very erudite and he can come away with other things, but she really pushes him. And so it's quite the conflict. And then his views on society end up causing really, really difficult conflict for the two of them. So but it's funny.
It sounds like he has as heavy of a growth curve or a character arc as Alexa's hero does.
He does. What I like about him is he's very intelligent. So eventually he figures it out. He understands, what's going on. But he does have quite a bit of a growth arc to get through. And then she ended up doing that too, because she's kind of set in her ways. So she ends up having to grow a little bit as well.
And they have a great book that will help them in that growth.
Yes.
Yeah. So no, I love watching a hero go through shifting his perspective from where he was before. And for her, I would imagine that just even softening enough to want to partner with somebody when you have, when you could be independent on your own, in that society would mean giving up some things that maybe you wouldn't want to give up.
Oh, absolutely. And she's a whiz with numbers, and he can't stand going over his ledger. And so, one point I know, right? At one point she walks in and he thinks she's the servant. He doesn't look up and he's like, I'm trying to figure out these damn numbers. And she's like, oh, you want some help?
So since all three of you have written female characters that and I think this happens a lot with our books in general, female characters that don't stay in prescribed roles necessarily. Was there something you had to do to make sure that you could make it fit within the time period you're writing in? Is there a way that you came to this story so that you found a place for these women who don't necessarily fit in the prescribed place?
Well, for me, I obviously, because I gave her an inheritance, right? That was like the only way she could be as knowledgeable as she is. I mean, she can read Latin, and he's like blown away by that. And her father's also kind of that quirky, reads everything kind of guy. So he's always encouraged her in this non-ladylike pursuit. So giving her that inheritance gave her that ability to do what she wants, but she tries to stay in the norms of society. Just like Jo March, she's always trying to improve, and she's always trying to, and the reason Joanna does it is because she doesn't want to ruin the chances of her younger sister or her cousin or anything. So she's trying to really behave. But she didn't expect that book.
Yeah, I think for Jaquetta, it's really, her work as Lady Knight, right, is really predicated on this idea that as a lady, you have access to certain things. As a lady moving in the ton, you're not noticed in the same ways. The things that are said in the retiring room are different than things that are said at the dinner table. And so she does play that debutante role when she's in society, and then kind of uses that to lure men away. So yeah, I think that that's sort of how they fit, right? They are almost shapeshifters, all of them.
Yeah, and that, I like that idea too of women being able to move into places that men can't, because they don't they don't pay attention to them in the same way.
Right, women run the house, they talk to the servants more, all of these things, right? That a man just can't do.
Yeah, and sometimes they write music.
And I think readers have grown more sophisticated over time as far as reading romances go. I look back to things that I read in the 1980s. And, you definitely, I mentioned coloring in the lines before, you definitely stayed in that box as a woman. But I think today, as we are becoming more empowered as women in our society, we want that reflected in everything, our music, our literature, that kind of thing. And so I know that I think women are drawn to Dragonblade books because of the heroines we create. Some of them are feisty or spunky. I mean, I've had some quiet ones, but sometimes it's the quiet ones with that core of steel, that really can shine. So I think that we have something going on at Dragonblade that make people want to sit up and pay attention and let us tell some stories, because there had to be women like that back then. Women that didn't fit into the societal boxes that most women were placed in. And we're just telling their stories. And yeah, maybe, there might people, some say that, oh no, that couldn't happen. But you know what? It's fiction, just enjoy it. Enjoy the story, enjoy the romance. I know all of us have talked about doing our research. And sometimes when I do research for a book, I do try to stretch it over several books. I wrote a pirate book, but I've just written a couple about ships too. And I went back and I pulled that pirate research from a few years ago, just, the crew and who did what task and, that kind of thing. So I think that we try to bring that verisimilitude to the writing, and we get the historical details right, but we're playing with some of the personalities and making our women stand out in an era and let them shine when most women did not.
Yeah. Well, and if you
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think that readers, you want history glossy. No one wants to read about the chamber pots of the era, like that's not what we're writing, right? Yeah. That's not what we want to read. We want to see, like you said, Alexa, we want to see ourselves in our characters. Yeah. And I've often written in an author note, I did the research, read the history, and then decided to change it a little bit. So, when I'm often guilty of, a building wasn't built until 2 years later, but like, I really need something for this. So I'm going to tweak it just a little bit, how it happened. Because, it's about the romance and it's about the characters. And like, for me, like they are number one. And if we have to think about how to play with the background norms or the societal norms, like it's all in service to that happily ever after.
Well, we want the Calgon take me away. We do want that fantasy. I know when I write, I put some of myself in every hero and every heroine and all. And I think the readers, as readers, they're putting themselves into the shoes of those characters and all. They don't want to read about wimpy characters. And I mean, let's face it. I mean, both of your books sound so amazing. It's like, I want to get off here and, start reading and all. I don't want to write today. I want to read what you wrote and everything. And it's just, our readers, we owe it to them to let them climb into the character's skin and let them experience some of the interest and fun that maybe some of these characters from long ago necessarily didn't get to. But as women of the 21st century, like you said, we're playing with things just a little bit, and our women are stepping outside of the norms, and I think it makes for a great romance.
And you still get to see society through the parts that don't line up.
Yes. We still have the pretty ball gowns, and we still get to go to tea, and we still have morning calls and all of that great stuff. But, yeah, I think we're giving the readers a unique experience now in romance that maybe they didn't have years ago.
Well, and I don't know when you all started writing romance, and I would love to talk about that for a little bit. But that was the escape was the thing, the escape and being able to put yourself in the mind of the heroine, especially as a teenage girl, and with the dime store, kind of Harlequins. It was that being able to live vicariously through characters and experience something that was not, that was not where I was living. What are the things that drew you to romance to begin with, and when did you all start reading?
It was on my mom's shelf. And as an intrepid 10-year-old trotting over there and pulling down a Johanna Lindsay. So way too early.
Well, we say way too early now, but it was that way for me too. My dad flew, and so he would bring airplane books back, and so I was reading Sidney Sheldon and stuff. But in my house, you could read whatever you like. If you were going to sit down and read it, you could read it. So the idea of some books being inappropriate for younger people was not something that really necessarily hit me until much later. So, but your mom was a big romance reader.
Yes, and I have a very distinct memory of being 5th or 6th grade and sitting in school during silent reading time, and my teacher coming over and being like, "Does your mom know you're reading that?" I'm like, "Yeah, my mom gave me this one."
Oh.
I mean, yes.
Oh, I used to read my romances under the desk in school. So I'm holding them and my teacher's talking and I'm reading. Oh yeah. I could not let my mother wasn't a romance reader, but someone had given her Shauna by Kathleen Woodward.
Yes.
Oh goodness.
I found it in her bedroom. And I said, "Can I read this?" And she's like, "Yeah," because she didn't read it.
Little did she know.
I still have that book. It's on my shelf. It is in tatters. I reread it. I don't know how many times, but I never thought I was going to be a writer. I mean, I was just gobbling up but my grandmother did read the Harlequins, the Victoria Holt, the Georgetta Hyers, all those. So I knew there was such a thing out there, but yeah, that book was an eye-opener for a 14-year-old.
I bet.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I can imagine. It's funny how we worry about this, the sex and the romance in books, and we don't necessarily worry about violence in them in the same way. Because, if people were reading mysteries or thrillers or things where people die as a matter of course, we don't tend to have the same kind of response to it. So.
And yet there was violence during that period. And I know in my books, I've put things in. I mean, first of all, just think about childbirth. How many women died in childbirth alone? It was dangerous to have children. So, yeah.
And dangerous the way you would just you just assume that this was going to be the thing that you did, so it's not really a danger you could avoid. It was
no, it was your designated role. I mean, especially if you married, a titled gentleman, you needed to provide that heir. You needed to provide that spare. That was your mission in life.
Well, actually, in my second book in this series, the hero's father, you talk about danger, he ended up dying from sexually transmitted diseases.
Oh my!
Which you don't even think about today.
Yeah.
That's a non-thing. But so now my hero's okay, one woman only, not gonna risk any, that kind of thing. So yeah, something as simple as having sex could kill you.
Yeah, that would color how you looked at everything.
Yeah. Oh, and speaking of my trilogy, it is a 3-book trilogy, of course, right? And they're all motivated by their deceased sister Belinda, which is Beth in Little Women. But the second book is about the sister Amelia, who is a painter, but beyond the lady painting, but a real really so she's going outside or trying to go outside the norm. And then the third sister is the oldest, Marielle. And she's actually a widow when the series opens, and she's a great horsewoman, which is actually not too far out of the norm. She's the one that tries to, keep everything together. She runs a good household. She's very much, but she's got, an edge to her that's not. That's the one I'm working on right now.
Oh, well, it sounds like so much fun, and we've got 3 Mabrys, and we've got more Lady Knights coming, and Alexa's got more suddenly a Duke. So we've got lots of things to look forward to. Ladies, it was a joy to talk to you today. It was so nice to meet you, Lexi and Cara. I love getting a chance to actually talk to authors in person. So this was lovely. I'm going to pop the links to the books this week in the comments for the chat. So if you haven't gotten your books yet, you want to grab them. Dragonblade books I'm going to say it again because I say it all the time. They're the very best deal on pre-order and release. So you want to grab them right away. Don't wait. And then you can get started on the new series and catch up with the Dukes as well. So, ladies, thanks for taking the time to join us. I really appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks
you
for having
so
us.
much. So
Bye.
nice to talk to you all.
Bye.